Hello, welcome to a gut reaction review of the film Zone of Interest. In case you haven't seen one of these before, they're pretty quick, normally under 20 minutes. And just my first impressions. I try and always do these as soon as possible after I've watched something. So it literally is my gut reaction of the film in question, or play, or a concert, or whatever else I may be reviewing at the time. Oh, good to see a couple of my regulars have popped in already. Thanks for doing that. Guys, I'm back on at 8 o'clock with a more in-depth review, a retro review, in fact, of the original Shogun, starring Richard Chamberlain, that first came out in 1980. I'll be reviewing that later, about 8 o'clock. Now, that got pushed back a few times because I wanted to make sure I'd rewatched it all, and it's a long ass series, man, with a lot of talking. And it takes a while to get through it. But let's get into Zone of Interest. Got quite a lot I want to say about this, and I think it's worth talking about. So first of all, straight off the bat, this is not an easy watch. Brief outline is Rudolf Höss, not to be confused with Rudolf Höss, who later ended up in Spandau prison. Rudolf Höss, who was the commandant of Auschwitz for most of the time during its operation, attempts to build a sort of life with some degree of normalcy in his house, which lies adjacent to the camp, which is overseen by his wife, who's played by, I think it's Sandra Hüller from Anatomy of a Fall. It's where their family and their children spend their time, along with other guests and friends who come to visit. They have this quite impressive villa with rather a nice garden that has, fruit and vegetables, and they even construct a small swimming pool. The reason I'm wearing my headphones for this review, which I don't normally do, is I strongly urge you to watch this film with your headphones firmly on. If you didn't see this at the cinema, this is a film you want to watch with your headphones on, with the backing track cranked up, because there are two narratives to this film. There is everything that you see in the foreground of this movie, and the story of a family getting on with their life, whilst in the distance, the business of war goes on around them. And then the second narrative is the sound design of everything that can be heard in the distance. In other words, what's on the other side of the wall. Now, it may interest people to know, I spent some considerable time today poking around Google Earth and things like that, because I was keen to find out where Rudolf Höss's house was exactly. And it is still there. And just to give people an idea, we'll have a quick look at that now. So his actual house is located here during a large part of the administration block of Auschwitz. So it was on the corner of the compound. Here's one of the guard towers. You can't do Street View here because they don't allow Google Earth Street View in Poland. And then this is actually part of the museum that you can go and see. But the museum for Auschwitz, you need to understand, is absolutely massive, because the camp was huge and a large portion of it was demolished. And the town, as you can see, has obviously grown since the war. But the part of the camp was all here. And then the part of the camp which has remained in situ is here. On the left here, and the trains would come here. This would be where people would be loaded off of the wagons and taken to the camps. And you know how that worked. Left or right would determine whether you lived or died. And these were the main parts of the camps that housed the workers. Most of the crematorium were demolished. There's one here. One here, by the SS soldiers when they were evacuating the camp as the Russians approached. So if I pull back, try and imagine that the camp itself actually came all the way to this corner here, would have occupied all of this area. This is just probably about 25% of the size of it, the section that's been left intact as part of a museum. So it's a very, very interesting and deeply disturbing film, and that's putting it politely. I guess told from it's about these people trying to sort of normalize their experience of the war. Sandra Hüller, who plays the wife of Höss, very good actress, very good German actress, is your typical Aryan SS wife who has conversations with her other friends when they come to visit about who ended up with which curtains from the Jewish neighbor who used to live opposite. And they're talking about just sort of ordinary mundane things, but trying to normalize what's going on around them, and they're fully aware of the tragedy that's taking place on the other side of the wall. Now, I felt the film would have been stronger if we had stayed largely inside their residence, and we do for probably about 55% of the movie. Another 25% of it in scenes like this. We occasionally go outside the compound. We see the children go playing in the woods, in the forest. There's picnics down to the lake, all the kind of things that a normal family would do. And it's great that those things are all included. But then he also takes a trip to Berlin on business, which is where scenes like this take place. And that kind of took me out of this experience a bit. We were going into sort of winds of war territory. And I get why these scenes are included. It's to show the business-like nature of this mass genocide. But we've had films that have covered this aspect of it before and in much more detail, including the play with Kenneth Branagh in, which is like a TV play where when they first discuss how it's all going to work, which is truly chilling. I've got the DVD of that. So I didn't really feel that this scene was necessary. And he goes to a party and things like that. I guess that stuff's included to show the surreal nature of how the life of these people continued on in the way that it did, whilst they were meting out, an annihilation of an entire race at the same time. Anyway, but where the film is at its strongest is when it stays in the grounds of the house, in the grounds of the garden, or inside the residence, and you hear these various things going on the other side. There's occasional gunshots at night. There's one very surreal scene where this wind comes howling through the house, and is it wind or is it the screams of people being gassed? It's incredibly effective. Production design is first class. They've gone to great lengths to recreate the house exactly as it was. I don't believe this was filmed on location in the actual house. I might be wrong about that. I'll be honest, I haven't checked. But I suspect that this is a CGI replication of that area, because the real house people live in it. So yeah, thanks for your National Socialist hospitality. Yeah, sounds about right. It's extremely well acted. All the cast are first rate, played dead straight. And it is a very, very good film. Now, I gave it 9 out of 10 initially, but actually I give it 8 out of 10 because the scenes in Berlin kind of reduced, for me, we stepped into a slightly different film. I understand why they were there. I understand the point that was being made by that, But this film is at its strongest when these people are doing ordinary things whilst we can hear in this incredible sound design landscape the horrific things that are going on the other side of the wall. This is not a date movie. It's not one to sit down with your partner and chill with a bottle of wine and put your feet up on the sofa. And this is a film that you must watch with your headphones on. I can't emphasize that enough. You've got to put headphones on when you watch this movie, and try. It's difficult these days, but try not to watch it while you're doing a dozen other things, or you're doing the ironing, or what have you. Yeah, it's we'll probably discuss it a bit on the Nielsen ratings this coming Tuesday, because I know a couple of the other guys have seen it. It's an extraordinary movie, which and I did some digging on what happened to the rest of the Höss family. You can read about that yourself on Wikipedia. There's a very good selection of photos on the internet. This is actually the view from one of the windows of the real house. So, and he deliberately sort of grew trees and things. This is inside the house. That's the real children there. But he grew trees and things to obscure the chimney of one of the crematorium, so it couldn't be seen. But this is this is how it looked inside the garden. The oldest son was reportedly quite the character. He used to fire stones with a slingshot at the Jewish staff or prisoners if he caught sight of them going past the edge of the gates. It's quite chilling to read some of these testimonies. Again, this is the back garden, and there's the compound wall. So this is the back garden today of the house in question. So, as I say, the film is at its strongest when it's located in the house or in the grounds of the house. It's the real guy who was executed. It's interesting to read his statements, actually, just before he died. There was a lot of Nazis that were unrepentant to the end. Höss was not one of those. He actually seemed to, during the time that he was awaiting his execution, he seemed to have a epiphany of, what he'd done was a disgrace to humanity, and that it sounds like it was genuine. I mean, I can only go from the letters and the testimony that I've read, and don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely not trying to gain any sympathy for this guy, but it is interesting that the more barbaric the people concerned with this regime and the acts that they committed, the general rule of thumb was that the more unrepentant they were. Not so with this man. These are some pictures from Majdanek, which is a different camp, also a museum. This is Höss's house again, seen from, I think, the rear garden. So a beautiful villa, as it's often described. And this is a picture of the house from the period. And as it says, the trees and the walls deliberately obscured the chimney of the crematoria. So, yeah, this is a wartime picture of the house. Still there, still intact. So is that guard tower. I do keep saying one day I'll go and visit Auschwitz. They say it's something everybody should do once. And I think it doesn't matter how much you prepare yourself before going there. I don't think you ever can fully prepare yourself for what you're going to see. So, zone of interest is not going to be for everyone. Some people probably won't get it. This is Höss after his arrest when he was finally found. This is some of the actual interiors of the house today. Again, there's the gate in the garden, and that would be, I think that would be the quarters of the soldiers, probably behind there, or administration blocks, that kind of thing. Not the quarters where the camp workers would be living. This is the basement of the actual house with graffiti that was still on the walls that was put at the time, which is a bit disturbing. Downstairs toilet. Yeah. Anyway, you can find those yourself. They're pretty easy to find on the internet. Just talk about the cast a little bit quickly. So Sandra Hüller, some people will recognize from Anatomy of a Fall. She plays Höss's wife. They had 5 children altogether, 3 of whom I think are now dead, and one of whom defrauded several, kind of created a career. Actually, it was the son of the oldest boy. He created a career out of publicly denouncing his grandfather's actions and sort of promising to track down various things on behalf of Jewish relatives, and then subsequently defrauding loads of them. And he's been sentenced. He's got 11 convictions for doing that. That's an interesting, different poster. I've not seen that one. I think probably the one with the black above the green is probably more effective. I don't think we need the sort of the Nazi-esque font. Interesting poster, but I prefer the one that they ended up with. That's an interesting one as well. The color red is used very effectively in this film, and they're doing a bit of I guess it's a bit of a nod to Schindler's List. Yeah, it's something that I guess represents the blood of the victims. This is the best poster, I think, for the movie, because they're blacking out everything that goes on outside, so it's very metaphoric. Very interested to know what people think of this movie. Do leave a comment down below. Yeah, I give it 8 out of 10. It's a great film. Am I going to buy it and have it in my Blu-ray collection one day? Probably not. Although, I don't know. I mean, the sound design on this film is absolutely phenomenal. And I guess we really should be, yeah, I reckon it's going to win Best Sound. I don't think it will win Best Picture. I think that's going to be Oppenheimer. I think Best Director will be Oppenheimer. Best Adapted Screenplay, maybe. Best International Feature, I think probably. I think this will win over Anatomy of a Fall. Anatomy of a Fall is nowhere near as good as this. It's a much more sort of ordinary film. It's just a fairly regular drama with some really good acting, but it's not, it's not a groundbreaking movie. Whereas this is, I've never seen sound design used quite so effectively as it is in this film. So on that subject, let's just see if we can get the name of the sound designer and give them a shout out, because I do like doing that. Jonathan Glazer, by the way, directed Sexy Beast. Martin Amis is a very established writer. They wrote the script together. So Christian Friedel, sorry, I haven't given him a shout out, who plays Höss with sort of cold clinical efficiency, I think would be the best way to describe him. It's a fantastic performance. Really good. Ooh, hang on, 13 minutes. Let me have a quick look at that. Yeah. The attempt to assassinate Adolf Hitler. I've always wanted to watch that movie, and I haven't got round to seeing it yet. I really should have a look at that at some point. So I guess he's in that. So it's always worth tracking down the other work of these really good actors. You'll find some real great foreign gem films that you won't have heard of before. Sandra Hüller, she's been around for quite a while now. I've seen her in a number of other movies. Requiem, Anatomy of a Fall, Munich, The Edge of War. I've seen her in. I actually own a copy of that. Suck Me Shakespeare 3. Not seen that. That sounds interesting. Pinocchio TV miniseries. I did also see. Seeing it's interesting. It's quite The Architect. I think I've seen, and Requiem. I've seen. Yeah, she's really good in Requiem. That was kind of the movie that really launched her career. And I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's quite hard to get hold of. Probably not going to be on your Netflix or whatever. Damn, my internet's suddenly gone all super slow. What's going on? All right, well, we won't click on that. We'll go back. Right, so let's. I mean, really, they're the only two casts that get decent screen time. So, and who you get to know, and it does revolve around their relationship as well. You know, yeah, I didn't realize Martin Amis had passed away. He died the same day the film had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. Damn, that sucks, man. I did not know that had happened, because Martin Amis, I think, writes a lot of books as well, if I remember rightly. London Fields Out of the Blue, the Rachel Papers. Okay, Dex was in that. Oh, well, that's a real shame. I'm sure he had a very full life lived well. I certainly hope so. So I want to credit the sound designer. Let's find out who it is. I'm not going to pretend to know, because I don't. So the usual slew of producers. Okay, so we should give a shout out to Lucas Zhao. Cinematography in this film is absolutely first class. Misha Levy, the music is good, very restrained, very good. Production design, Chris Odie, fantastic job. And the art direction, set decoration, all of makeup, all of those period things, absolutely first class. So here's the sound department. So the sound editor, who I imagine is our main man on this, is Maximilian Behrens, who also worked on the sound department on Poor Things, Nope, Adrift in Soho, The Killing of the Sacred Deer. So he, relatively new to the game, 13 credits, but doing a bloody good job. Also a composer. Now, look, the sound department is, as you can see there, there's a huge number of names. And if they win the Oscar for the sound on this, you've really got to give a shout out to all of these people. I'm not going to read them all out now. You can read the name for yourself. But that it makes the film, you know. It is this film of two narratives. What you see and what you hear are two very different things in this movie. And that is less effective when it moves outside of the immediate realm of the residents. James, you've clearly seen the film. Let me ask you a question. I said this would be really short. I'm 25 minutes already. Let me ask you a question, James. Did you think that the film lost a bit of momentum, lost a bit of its edge when we left the villa and we went to Berlin? And I guess the last 20 minutes. I'm not talking about the flash forward. That was very effective, and I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't seen it. But I did feel when we left the immediate villa, the zone of interest, if you like, the gardens and the house, and that, although the style of the sound design and everything continued, I just felt the film lost something there for me. that if I think I would have scored it a 9 out of 10 if we had stayed in the house, and stayed with the wife, and stayed with everything she'd heard. I think that would have been more effective. I didn't really need to see 20 Nazis sitting down at a table discussing train timetables, and it's not a long scene. It's a pretty short scene, but it didn't add anything to the film, other than, I guess, for someone who's coming into this completely blind and hasn't seen any other films on the Holocaust at all, which I guess some of the younger generation probably haven't. I guess it kind of shows how that side of it is very normal as well. But I personally didn't think we needed that. James has put a response. Thank you for taking the time to reply, mate. A little, I guess they wanted to show something of Hoss's duties without going inside the camp. The flash forward pulled me back in, definitely. Yeah, oh yeah, the flash forward flash forward was very effective. I was like, what's this at first? I was okay, I see what they're doing, and then you know, and the fact that it then cut back to the past again from there, I was like, oh. So, and as I said, Hoss was someone who did repent. You know, he did. I don't know. I'm choosing my words carefully here because, again, I'm not trying to give the man any sympathy, but he did have an epiphany of the evil and the crimes that he'd inflicted upon humanity, and he said so in the weeks or days leading up to his death. He was very clear about it, and his advice to his wife and his children was to look into their heart, for every decision that they made in life going forward, some of whom embraced it and some of whom clearly didn't. Some of the children never spoke to each other again. They kind of all fell out with each other. So it's interesting to read what happened there. There's a film to be made about that, actually. You know, Crimes of the Father. That's a good title, isn't it? But you know, yeah, sounds like one of those nightmares you can't wake up from. Best way I can describe it. Very true. Very true. So, in summary, then, yes, you should see this film. Even if this period doesn't interest you, it's a very, very different take on, I guess, the microcosm of what went on around the Holocaust, the mundane banality, in a way, of how they tried to treat that was just going on over the other side of the wall. And I guess that was the only way for them, was to normalize it. But there was nothing normal about it, of course. It was one of the worst acts of atrocity ever committed in human history. And this film doesn't shy away from that. Don't get me wrong. It's not Schindler's List. You're not going into showers and things. But the fact that you've got this narrative audio track all the way through, it's so well done. It really does send chills up your spine at different moments of the film. So it's a big thumbs up from me. It won the Palme d'Or, I think, at the Cannes Film Festival, and rightly so. Rightly so. So I wish the cast and the production team the best of luck at the Oscars for their 5 nominations. I certainly hope that they'll pick up one. They should absolutely get Best Sound, and it'd be great if they got Best Foreign Film. And listen, if they got Best Picture, I'd be quite happy. Everyone would be up in arms because everyone would be expecting it to be Oppenheimer. But we shall see. We shall see. All right, that's it from me. I'm back in a couple of hours. I'm back at 8 o'clock. Just for about an hour or so, I'll be doing a little special in-depth review on the 1980 version of Shogun. This is the one starring Richard Chamberlain. Sorry, his name went out my head for a second. starring Richard Chamberlain and I don't want to mispronounce his name wrong. The man from the Seven Samurai, Mifune. I'm going to pronounce his name incorrectly. I've just finished watching it again for the first time in a really long time. And it's going to be interesting to have seen that when we've got the new Shogun TV series dropping next week. I thought that was actually dropping on Friday, and I was going to do an in-depth review of it on Saturday evening, but they moved the release date, so it's not dropping until next week. So I've got that lined up for next Wednesday. So Shogun 1980 later tonight, Shogun 2024 next week. All right, that's it from me for now. Do join me at 8 o'clock UK time. I'll be back, and I might be doing a gaming stream later tonight in the wee hours of the morning. You'll probably see me online for a couple of hours doing my American Civil War thing. All right, until then, take care. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Do leave a comment below, and I'll chat to you again real soon.